Hello, everyone. This is KJ, and we are welcoming a guest today. This is Kristin. Say hi.
Hi there.
Hi, Kristin. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We are going to be looking into some of your background and what you've been doing with your education abroad and your teaching experience. And I just really wanted to start by having you talk to me about your certification. Are you a certified teacher?
I am a certified teacher. I probably have more certifications than anyone that you know. I have a certification. First, I got my French and Spanish certifications, and then I ended up getting a master's degree. So, along with that, was a certification in ESL. And then when I was teaching in the States, I ended up getting a certification in bilingual education. And then I took some tests in Wisconsin because in Wisconsin you can get certificates by doing tests. So then I also have a history and a geography license. So I've got a whole bunch.
Very nice, very nice. You mentioned teaching in the US. Can you talk a little bit about your teaching experience here?
Sure. So after I had taught abroad a little bit, I came back to the United States and taught in my hometown in Wisconsin, my home state of Wisconsin. And I ended up doing the first year, I did a position kind of just to get my foot in the door in the district. And it was dual language immersion, which I really enjoyed, but it was fifth grade. And I had only done high school, and I had experience teaching abroad in schools that were very high achieving with high schoolers. And if not high achieving, they were at least very small classes of like 10 or 12 students. And so I had real close relationships with those students and didn't have too many discipline issues. The students were generally wealthy students. And then I was transported back to my hometown, where for this program, the student population was very, very different. Many of my students had had parents that were incarcerated. Many of them, didn't have food, food scarcity. And so it was a real shock for me. It was very, very different. And it was at the same time an incredible learning experience. But I will admit that I almost quit during that year. It was really tough for a number of different reasons, and kind of the perfect storm of reasons. But I stuck it out, and the next year I got a job in a high school, which was better suited to my skills and abilities. And it was still dual language immersion. So I really enjoyed doing that. I learned a lot about teaching heritage speakers of Spanish, who are students that speak Spanish at home. And yeah, it ended up being overall a really positive experience, and one where I really grew as a teacher and as a person.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know it can be so hard as a teacher working in environments that, even though they're difficult, perhaps you're not getting the support that you need. Do you think perhaps that you weren't getting the support that you needed?
Yeah, it was very much, like I said, the perfect storm of all things going wrong. The fact that, first of all, I was teaching a subject that I wasn't certified for. I didn't really have much experience with that age group. The school was under construction that year, so I was basically in a large closet-sized classroom. And along with that, the school was very much understaffed, so there weren't the support staff there. I know the principal said it was the hardest year that he had ever had too. So it was just, yeah, a perfect storm of things.
Well, you made it. You made it.
I
Um,
did.
do you think that played a role in you wanting to relocate to teach?
So I had actually been teaching abroad before that. I guess I can give you kind of the background of my story. I wasn't someone that knew right away that they wanted to be a teacher. I was very interested in languages. And so I was a language major and did some business. And then after I graduated, I went and taught in Spain for a year, mostly because I hadn't done a study abroad in Spain. So I wanted to So there's a great program in Spain that I would recommend for anyone that wants to try teaching. It's in generally public and private schools in Spain. You get paid about 1,000 euros, depending on where in Spain you are, a month. So about enough to live off of. You don't save much, but you get health insurance and everything you need. So I did that and then got some confidence and decided, okay, I think I do want to be a teacher. So I came back and I was working another job. But while I was working that job, I got my teaching license. And then I knew that I wanted to go to teach abroad right away. That was kind of the idea. I wanted something that was going to let me travel the world and live different places. And so I was really lucky, and through, I guess, persistence and luck, I ended up getting kind of an internship for a year at a boarding school in Switzerland. And yeah.
Wow. Okay. Can you tell us just a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, definitely. So I had never taught at boarding schools before, but I had done a lot with camp counseling, and it was very similar in the sense that the kids are always with you, right? You're always responsible, and you kind of have little to no private life because you are living on campus with the students. So I had a very nice apartment, but it was in the same dorms that the students were in. We did dorm duty 1 weeknight, and then every 5 weeks we had weekend dorm duty. But we had, I would say, probably a little bit easier teaching schedule. We had 5 classes out of 7, and most of the classes were very small. Like I said, like 12 students or so.
What an interesting experience. Really nice. Really nice.
Yeah.
So Kristin, random question. Would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
That's a good question. I think I'm kind of in the middle, but I would say a little more introverted than extroverted.
Okay. And my next question kind of piggybacks into that. How has travel changed you? Being that you are kind of in the middle, where you kind of are a little bit outgoing, kind of a little bit reserved, how has travel changed you?
I think traveling has given me a lot more confidence and has probably made me a little more extroverted. Um, I'm not afraid to go up to people when I don't know the language or I don't know the culture or the person that I'm talking to, and just kind of ask them the questions to get what I need. I think that's something that I can do really well. So being able to do that, I think, has given me more confidence. And yeah, it's challenging to travel, but you really get a great sense of success when you're able to do things in other languages or in other places. Even something simple as like mailing a letter, or going to the grocery store and getting supplies for a cake.
Of course.
So,
Good, good. My next question is hopefully not too controversial. How is teaching abroad different from teaching in the US?
mm. So teaching abroad can be a very large term, and depending on the school and the country that you're at, it could be a very, very different experience. If you are at an international school where the students are truly from all different countries, you're often going to be teaching students who are fairly wealthy, for whom education is very important, that have had parents and family members that have gone to college. Whereas, teaching in the United States, again, it depends completely on the school that you're at, but you may have students that are facing food scarcity, that are the first ones in their family going to college, that are recent immigrants. So I had a colleague once when actually I asked this question as I was going to go back to teaching in the US. And he said, in public schools, the highs are higher and the lows are lower. And I think that's the absolute perfect description.
can agree. I can agree. It's a lot. It's a lot. And I think that the fact that you've had the experience of teaching in two different environments or a variety of environments kind of really helps to shape your outlook on education. And that's really important. So thank you for sharing. Name two challenges you actually faced when you taught abroad.
Ooh, let's see. I think the first would be curriculum. In most of the places, when I went to Switzerland, it was my first time teaching officially. And then when I after Switzerland went to a school in Singapore, and there I was teaching Spanish and social studies. So it was the first time I was teaching social studies. So it was, completely learning the curriculum, learning how the IB program works. And last year I taught in Colombia. And the school that I taught at there, I was teaching a whole heap of classes. I had marketing, I had Canadian history, I had, what else, like a careers class. So I enjoy doing lots of different things, and I've been lucky enough to be challenged in that way. I enjoy that, but it also is a ton of work, and you have to be okay with feeling like you don't know what you're doing. So I would say that would be the number one challenge. That could be avoided if you take a job where you know the subject you're going to be teaching.
Okay.
But often I will say in international schools, especially the smaller ones, they need teachers that can teach multiple subjects. So that is an advantage if you're willing to or able to teach multiple subjects.
All right. Very good.
That was one challenge. The other one, I think, probably the biggest for me, honestly, is just being away from family and friends.
Yeah. I actually recorded a podcast earlier, and that was one of the things I included, right? Like, as a fear for some people, not wanting to actually teach abroad because of that fear of missing family and, not being able to be at certain special or be at certain milestones, right? Birthdays, christenings, baptisms, weddings, bridal showers. Like you miss a lot and you miss family. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was always very lucky, and when I was abroad, I would come home for Christmas and then in the summers. And it is pretty easy to do that because you usually have at least 2 and most often 3 weeks off at Christmas time in the winter. And then summer, of course, 7+ weeks usually. So that does give you time. Schools may or may not pay for those flights. It really depends on where you are.
Of course.
But I made efforts to talk to family members to make sure I FaceTime, for example, with my niece and nephew. And I think one thing that's important too is you don't have to teach abroad for the rest of your life. You have a 2-year contract, right? And you can come and go. And that's kind of what I did. After teaching in Singapore, I was like, I really need to be with my family and friends for a little bit. I was having some mental health issues and just some stress issues. And so I came back for a while. And then last year I decided I wanted to go and teach in Colombia. And so every year is a new year. There are even jobs that you can get halfway through the year. So you can always make that decision. It doesn't mean that, you're set in stone for being away from family for the rest of your life.
Honestly, Kristin, I love that you mentioned that because that was my next question. Would you ever go back to teaching in the US? And I'm glad you mentioned that just because you go teach abroad, it doesn't have to be forever, right? There's an opportunity to go learn things, go to different countries, perhaps come back, right? So would you ever come back?
Yes. So I am actually this year doing something that's, I guess, kind of a hybrid model. Like I said, I taught last year in Colombia, and it was only a 1-year contract. And with COVID, that's part of the reason that I really wanted to take it, because as you probably know, most contracts are 2 years, which is a commitment, right? That's a sizable commitment. And I have a couple things that after Colombia I decided are really important to me. And one of them is my condo that I bought here in Madison. And, I felt like I just needed a place where I had roots. And so I have this condo that I love, and I have a roommate, so that helps with bills, but it's still obviously a mortgage to pay. And my niece and nephew that I mentioned are little and cute and want to hang out with Auntie Kristin. And so I just am loving being a part of their life. And so between those two things, I just kind of felt like I couldn't commit full time. So I actually ended up getting a job where I'm teaching Spanish online. And I'm teaching to students in schools, often in rural areas where they haven't been able to find Spanish teachers. And so I'm able to travel with that. I spent a few months in the fall traveling to Morocco and Spain and all over Europe. And then I just got back from Guatemala for a month.
The dream. The dream. You are definitely living.
It's nice to have that freedom for sure right now.
Oh, certainly.
I definitely don't want to say that I'm done international teaching. I hope to go back. Teaching online, I will be totally honest, is not as good for me as a teacher or for the students as having an in-person teacher. But for right now, it's working well.
Understandable. Now, what advice would you give to 18-year-old Kristin?
I think I would say go for it and don't listen to what other people say. To an extent, of course, usually their advice is well-meaning. But the first time I think that I went abroad, people were very much like, oh my gosh, are you sure you want to do this? Like, you just got out of college, you're supposed to go and get a job. So that whole rhetoric about, what you're supposed to do in your life, I think it's you do what you want to do with your life, as long as you are safe and able to pay the bills. So I think that I would just encourage myself. I have not regretted any of the jobs that I've taken or the places abroad that I've gone. I feel each of them has really enriched me in different ways. And just go for it.
Honestly, wonderful advice. Wonderful advice. I think we should all take that to heart. Thank you so much. Now, our last question. What's one question you wish I would have asked you?
Ooh, that is a hard question. Let's see. Maybe what a travel recommendation or a place to teach abroad.
Okay. Can you answer that for us? So what's the recommendation you would give us for a great place to teach abroad?
Yeah, so I would say if you're looking for a place that has good pay and is pretty easy to start out in, I would definitely recommend Singapore. My biggest complaint about Singapore was the weather, because it's hot, sticky, tropical, but I know some people love that. So if you can put up with the weather, it's a great place, super safe, fun to explore. I guess the other negative is the flights, and that it's a very long way from the United States. But considering that those are the two negatives, the positives really outweigh that.
Oh, certainly. Thank you. That's a really, really good one. And I'm actually now thinking about, that should probably be at the top of my list. So thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks again for joining us. We really do appreciate you coming on to the podcast. Where can the listeners find you?
So I have a website and I have blog posts all about my travels and my experience teaching. And there's also one there about how to become an international school teacher if you're someone that's thinking about doing this. So my website is growingglobalcitizens.com.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kristin. I will definitely add your links for social media and the blog on the show notes so that everyone can be able to get to them and reach out to you. I know I'm following you, and you have so many great, great photos and gems to share, and I appreciate what you are giving to your followers on being abroad and teaching abroad. And I like the language piece because I think many of us look at teaching abroad opportunities as whether you're teaching in public school or international school or teaching English, but not many get that piece of teaching a language, right? Spanish, French, or some other foreign language. So I'm glad that you're able to bring that perspective, and I appreciate having you here.
Thanks very much, KJ.
All right, bye. Take care, everyone.
Bye bye.